If you care, if you really, really care, the way that you say you care when you're speaking in whispers and harsh tones, the way you say it when no one is listening, if you really care about yourself and about the future of this country for your children, you and I will do something about this. This government needs to be held accountable, and more than that, we need to be present ourselves to bring, because no one is coming. Nobody is coming to save us. We know this story. It's been 40 years. The economy has floundered more than once. We've lost everything, and nobody came. Nobody's coming now. We're the ones that have to show up.
Okay, it's time for our favorite podcast, Cut to the Chase. Are you one of those people out there that are looking to resist? There's a lot of bad things going on in the world, and you might be feeling the need to resist. And maybe you're not sure how to resist or what might be involved. And so today I am honored to bring Pastor Evan Mawarire. I hope I got that right.
You got it.
All right. He's a Zimbabwean human rights advocate, pastor, and the founder of This Flag movement. 1980, Zimbabwe became independent.
Mm-hmm.
And Pastor Evan was 3 years old living there.
Yep.
And then here we are today, and he's going to share his experience. He was in prison numerous times for his efforts. I believe he was sentenced to 80 years in prison. And so here we go, Evan. Let's share your story and when it started, what motivated you to start. What were the problems in Zimbabwe? My audience, I don't think they really know what was going on.
Right.
And what is going on in Zimbabwe and a lot of the African countries.
Greg, thanks so much for having me. On your show. Growing up in Zimbabwe, you would have known the fact that Robert Mugabe, who became president in 1980, over 40 years became a dictator. And I mean, if someone stays in power for 40 years, that's already a problem. And so Robert Mugabe comes to power and promises that Zimbabwe will be a democracy. And in the first couple of years, it looks that way. And then things start to fall apart. There's political violence. People are being murdered in the country for dissent. People are being accused of things that they didn't do. And they're just being murdered in their homes. And this happens all through the 80s. And then we get into the 90s. And the economy starts to fall apart, and that's because of the corruption that's happening within the administration, all the cronyism, and the abuse of power. And that leads eventually in the 2000s to Zimbabwe experiencing one of the most amazing and shocking economic crashes. In 2008, Zimbabwe's inflation is running at 286 million%. And the largest banknote at the time, for you to help you wrap your heads around what 286 million% looks like, Zimbabwe's largest banknote at the time is this. This is, and I don't know if this is something that you can see clearly, but this is a one. Let me do that again on the screen. There, it's a $100 trillion note. $100 trillion. Right? That's 14 zeros on that note. And the height of inflation, this $100 trillion note is enough to buy you a loaf of bread. And so things have gotten really bad, 2008. But then we roll on. Eventually that currency is scratched. People lose everything in it. Nobody's held accountable. 2016 comes. At that point, I am now married. I'm a grown up. I'm a father. I have my own family. And Zimbabwe is going through a second round of an economic crash. I'm pastoring a small church. That's when I'm sitting in my small church office, and I'm like, I'm failing to feed my family. This is not working, and this is gonna get worse. And I've had enough just watching it get worse and do nothing. So I grab my phone, prop it up against my Bible in my office, and I record a 4-minute and 11-second video in which I basically, and it was a rant, to be honest, Greg. It was a rant. I was venting. I was angry. I was upset. But at the same time, I also felt like there's something that's missing in terms of, what can be done. And in this video, I basically say to the Zimbabwean citizens, if you care, if you really, really care, the way that you say you care when you're speaking in whispers and harsh tones, the way you say it when no one is listening, if you really care about yourself and about the future of this country for your children, you and I will do something about this. This government needs to be held accountable. And more than that, we need to be present ourselves to bring, because no one is coming. Nobody is coming to save us. We know this story. It's been 40 years. The economy has floundered more than once. We've lost everything, and nobody came. Nobody's coming now. We're the ones we have that have to show up. So that video goes completely viral beyond what I'd expected. And it begins the process of building a citizens movement, which initially I didn't want to do, but then grew into saying, okay, let's build a citizens movement. Let's see where this goes. And of course, it led us through the journey where we built many campaigns that were amazing, starting online, and then eventually those becoming kind of crystallizing on the street, in some creative and exciting ways. But as you said, that led me into places where I was arrested. I was charged with treason, held in a maximum security prison where I was tortured, beaten. And that was more than once, by the way. Over a space of 3.5 years, I was arrested 6 times. One of those times escaping, it's an interesting story, which we can talk about at some point, and then going back into prison again. But eventually seeing that dictator removed and overthrown in 2017. So that's in a nutshell what happened in Zimbabwe.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about a couple of emotional parts of resisting that some people, I think, gravitate to when they think about resisting, like, will they regret it? What is the downside? Is my life going to be changed forever? Am I going to be successful? So let's start with the regret. Do you regret it? I mean, you suffered a
Oh, yes, I
horrific.
suffered a lot. There are certain things, Greg, that I look back. I have to be honest with you, and sometimes I think to myself, man, I wish I hadn't done some of those things. But having said that, and I've often said this to a lot of people, had you told me at the beginning of the journey what I was going to go through and what I was going to suffer, I would never have signed up for it. It
Yeah.
was 3.5 years of just brutal pain, but it was also 3.5 years of amazing results, of seeing things that I would never have seen personally, things that we would never have seen as a nation as well. And then I often say to people, if you ask me now after the journey to give everything up, would I give everything up that I went through? My answer is no. I would never give it up. Again, because we we brought ourselves as a citizenry to a new place of awareness and a new place of engagement. We saw things that we could not see. Now, are they things that are painful? Yes, they are. Because Greg, that is the price of change and the price of wanting to see things become something different. There's a price has got to be paid. It just doesn't happen in our comfort zone. The biggest challenge that people face when they're wanting to see change is this constant battle between wanting to stay in their comfort zone but also wanting the beauty of change. You have to get out of the comfort zone for you to be able to get the change. And sometimes it means that you will lose something. Sometimes it means that there's a certain amount of pain that comes your way. So whether you look at Nelson Mandela in South Africa, or whether you look at Martin Luther King right here in the United States, or whether you look at people like Gandhi, whichever way you look at it, there has to be a certain amount of discomfort that precedes the change that you're looking for.
All right, so we're going to go back to right before you create this 4-minute video in 2016 that you post on social media and goes viral. I mean, back then, I don't even know that people were thinking, hey, videos could go viral. But I would
No.
imagine at that point, you were angry, you were pissed off, you were
Hmm.
ranting. I would imagine you were surprised about how the Zimbabweans and the rest of the world responded. What was, I mean, I gather there was a big positive response or whatever, but describe the general way things happen. How did they unfold? Were people calling you up? Were people coming over to you? Were people signing up? Like, tell me how that all went down.
It all begins in a moment. And I've often said this when I speak in different places about movement building or finding your courage. that there is a moment usually that defines a movement, or that defines what comes after, in that moment. And for me in Zimbabwe, this moment that I had of my anger coincided with a national moment or a national sentiment, which was the economy was starting to go bad. Prices were going up. Everybody was feeling the pain. Nobody knew what to do or say. And I happened to say the right thing at the right time, and it resonated. Literally, it was able to, to capture the national sentiment. So we have to understand that sometimes these things happen in moments, but also that doesn't mean that if we don't have a moment, then we do nothing. Sometimes we prepare ourselves for the moment. It's possible to create a moment, to lead up to a moment, and we were able to replicate, this arrival at these key moments in the movement. But to answer your question of, so how did this then happen, is after I did that first video that went out, I actually tried to back out of that whole thing by doing more videos that were trying to explain what I was not saying, because now I was scared that I had said something that people had resonated with and they were calling it a revolution. And I was scared that the government was coming for me, because I wasn't trying to start a revolution. I was trying to start a conversation. I was trying to get people to talk, to express themselves concerning what was happening. But what I then discovered was that all the videos I did to try to get out of it only created a lot more traction, because in the conversation that I would then have when I posted up these, I think it was 2 other videos, I would say to them, look, I'm not starting a revolution. We're not trying to overthrow the government. However, I am wanting to rally us around the fact that we have levels of corruption in this country that need to be stopped. We have levels of poverty and levels of injustice in this country that need to be checked. And that's where you and I come in. And that's what continued to catch people. So the decision became for me to do actually more of these videos. And I remember giving myself in the month of May, and this actually coincides today, on this particular day, which is May 26th. I remember doing a set of videos from the 1st of May to the 25th of May. And I said to Zimbabweans, I'm going to do one video a day for 25 days. It's a 3-minute video in which I will tell you why it's important for you to speak up, why it's important for you, a nobody, why it's important for you, someone that no one knows, an ordinary citizen, to register what your thoughts are, to register your displeasure, to register your anger, because it's not enough to be angry at home. There comes a point where we have to bring our anger or our passion out, and particularly be able to join it with everyone else. And so that's how that began to happen. And my call to action was, every day when I put a video out, I'm asking you to do one of 2 or maybe 3 things. Number 1, either comment on it. Number 2, maybe share it. Number 3, maybe if you can, I'm going to ask you to make a video of your own. And so there was now a progression, there was a journey, or there was a way to onboard people who were previously scared. Because remember, Greg, this is a country that we have witnessed brutality at untold levels. I'll give you one of the punishments that Robert Mugabe unleashed on people when he lost the election in 2008. And he refused to leave, by the way. He just said, I've lost the election, I'm not leaving, I'm going to stay. But he went into the areas that voted against him, and he gave them a punishment that he called long sleeve, short sleeve. And it is a punishment in which you choose whether your arm is chopped off at the wrist or at the elbow. And that is a reminder that you do not vote in the wrong place in the next election in the next 4 years. So people in Zimbabwe were afraid. Fear was a part of our culture, especially fearing the political establishment, fearing the political administration. That was and still remains part of our culture. And so the idea of doing 25 videos and asking people to just participate online by just watching, either you can watch or you can comment or you can share or you can do your own video, was a way of saying, hey, here's an easy way to onboard. Here's a safe way for you to be able to participate in something that lets you register your displeasure. And it was amazing how that worked. And the realization was that sometimes people don't go from fear to courage in 30 seconds. We can't go from 0 to 100 in 2.5 seconds. There is a journey, there is a process where people warm up, where people discover their courage one step at a time, one action at a time, and they begin to believe in their own ability to bring change or their own ability to be heard. So that's how that began and how that grew into eventually the biggest protest that we did, which I can talk about a little bit later, whenever you're ready. But I want to stop here for now.
Okay, all right. So, going back to emotions and in the context of someone who's listening here and they want to resist, maybe it's a small thing, that you want to resist. I'm not, it doesn't have to be, a global movement.
Hmm.
Your resistance could just be in your little neighborhood association. You
Yep.
got some bully running the board of your condo, whatever, and but fear kicks in. And you were arrested multiple times
Hmm.
for treason. I mean, it's not like a little, DUI, small arrest. You're gonna come out the next day, whatever. So tell the audience. I'm just gonna presume that you had fear.
Oh yes.
And how
Oh
did you
yes.
deal with it? And what do you recommend for those? I mean, you talked about from going from fear to courage. I don't necessarily know that even with the courage, you will completely eliminate the fear, but give us your take.
Well, and I love the way the way you asked that, because I think the misconception for a lot of people when they hear my story is, my gosh, you're just so much more courageous than I am. Like I would never be that courageous. And I usually ask people, why would you say that? And they say, well, just the level of danger that you face is just so big. And I don't think I could do that. So I don't have that kind of courage. And my response has always been that courage has less to do with the fear and the danger and more to do with our decision to act. So let me give you my definition of courage. It is the decision to act for the things you care about the most. That's what courage is. And I don't include fear or danger in defining courage, because if we do that, what we do is we empower the things we fear. We empower the danger to be able to then limit us from doing what we need to do. So the fear and the danger, though present, are a secondary part of our courage journey. The first and most important part is that we have a cause, something that we then build actions around, and the actions that we build around that cause, that's what our courage is. So if, say for example, you're in a neighborhood, there is somebody that keeps speeding down a road that has a speed limit, there are kids in the area, people are concerned that a kid is going to get knocked over, but people just don't know where to start. What do we do? it For me, the way that works, because that's an opportunity to start a small campaign, a micro campaign that could actually grow beyond the borders of that community. But the way it begins is that it starts with one person who registers their displeasure and then begins to get the buy-in of the community, that first of all, is there anyone else who feels this way? Yes, there is someone else who feels this way. Okay, so you and me together, we both feel this way. Let's start to figure out what it is we want to see happen. We want to have slower speed signs put up in our neighborhood. We may even want to have a police presence on particular days of the week on our street. And so once we've come up with those kind of actions, then we take the action together, and then we start to get other people involved. So it could be a petition, it could be a letter we write to the local council or the local board. It could be end up in, if no one is listening, then we escalate it. It becomes a little protest that we put up every Monday or every Wednesday. We're going to stand on the corner of the street where these cars come screaming with signs there that say stop speeding, or that say bring these potential murderers to book, right? And you start to really have a presence. So you've gone from a problem that everyone has, but one person says, I'm going to ask if anyone else feels this way. And then me and that person, we're going to figure out, how do we take just one action? Just one. Let's write a letter to the board. Let's write a letter to the police. Let's give the police a call. And then we're going to ask, hey, are there other people around? Maybe you can't come to the board meeting. Maybe you cannot come to the protest. Can you sign a petition? How many signatures can we get? Because then what you want to do is to create the sense that there is momentum, the sense that there are more voices around this issue. At that point, we begin to grow our collective courage, and we begin to dissipate the amount of fear associated with what we're trying to do.
Okay, so you start your resistance, 2016. Was it a success?
In many ways, Greg, it was a success. I want to give you, I'll give you just one, maybe two examples of how this succeeded. After we had started this in April of 2016, my first video goes out April 19, 2016. The government was now beginning to introduce a new currency in Zimbabwe. We had already had the experience of this guy, the $100 trillion note, so we didn't want a second experience. And that's when I begin to say, you guys can't introduce this money. There's no way. Where there has to be a national dialogue, there has to be a legal framework, there needs to be reassurance that we're not going to lose our money the way we lost our money the last time. The government refuses to listen to anybody. They refuse to listen to us because we're nobodies, right? We're just a group of people talking on Facebook and Twitter, so they don't care who we are. I remember then sitting in my pickup truck. This was now in July, the 4th of July, 2016. And I'm sitting in my pickup truck in the parking lot of our apartment complex where I lived with my family. And I have come to a point of enough is enough. We've taught people how to speak up. We've been talking together for months on end. It's time to act. And so I sit in this truck, I put up my phone, and I say, if you're watching this video, in the next 2 days, I'm going to ask you to take one of the boldest steps we've ever taken. And it's simple, but if we do it together, it's gonna make a statement. On the 6th of July, 2 days from today, from the 4th of July, which is interesting, 4th of July, right? I said to them, I'm gonna ask you to help me shut this country down. To shut it down in the middle of a week. I think it was a Wednesday, the 6th of July, Tuesday or Wednesday. Shut the country down, bring the whole thing to a standstill. How? How do we even do that? And I said, I'm going to ask you to do one simple action just for one day. I'm going to ask you to stay at home. Don't go anywhere. Don't go to work. Don't take your kids to school. Don't go on the street at all. Don't go to the supermarket. Don't go to the bank. Go nowhere. Stay at home. Let's bring the whole thing to a complete stop. Let's make every city a ghost town. Let's make every highway completely empty. That will speak louder than any physical protest that we could ever have, because we're afraid to do it. So it's simple. This one is easy to do, right? And so I record that video, and immediately I know that, okay, if this does not succeed, first of all, the movement is done, because then people are going to be like, it didn't work. He had a good run on social media, but I guess no one was really listening. But if it succeeds, then we also have the added problem that the government will now really consider us a threat. The 6th of July comes, Greg. I'll never forget this for as long as I live. The 6th of July comes, and it works. It worked. The entire country came to a standstill. Over 12 million people responded. They responded to a random pastor of 40 people. A whole country heard the voice. A whole country came together and took that action. And so that was a victory immediately. In fact, I want to be able to say this, and I say this to people. It's not the result that's the victory. The victory is that we dared to start it. If you dare to start as an individual in your house and you say, all I'm going to do is I'm going to get out there and I'm going to get 50 signatures that say this is not right and needs to be stopped. If that's all you ever did and you submitted the signatures or you posted the signatures, if that's all you ever did, you succeeded. And so in starting change or in figuring out how to resist, frame your victory. Your victory is not framed by anyone else but by you. So for us, the fact that we were able to speak out, the fact that I called for the protest to begin with, that was a victory already. But then to see it happen for me was just incredible. And at that point, the movement went to the next level because every victory of your movement that you have takes the movement to the next level of growth and the next level of influence. And so that's what we did. For us, that was a huge win. It was amazing to see how the movement grew after that. That's when people began to come physically to help, to be part of the movement. What can we do? Can we make t-shirts? How can we decentralize the movement? And so we began to see the movement grow in other parts of the country and then internationally, in Johannesburg, South Africa, in Sydney, Australia, in Toronto, Canada, in London, the United Kingdom, in Nairobi, Kenya. The movement began to grow. And so I think those are all different levels of victory, that we were able to see.
Is the movement still alive?
So the movement is still alive, but not in the same form. After my 3.5 years of incarcerations and tortures, and even some of our members as well going through, all of that, and then eventually the government really came after the movement and tried to dismantle it. We had to kind of form it. We decentralized it, and now it exists with different expressions, under different kind of programs and movements. And unfortunately, we don't talk about it publicly because we don't want those to be targeted or to be disturbed. Um, but I think that was the amazing part of it. At the end of it, that it gave birth to many, many more people who were willing to do what I did in the beginning and began to do it in different parts of the country and different parts of the world.
So talk to me about Zimbabwe right now. How's the human rights situation? Have things improved since you began your movement?
Zimbabwe's situation right now is dire. Unfortunately, things seemed to get a little better, but things then got worse. But let me take you through a little story of what happened. In 2017, a year and a half after we'd started the movement, and another opportunity came, a moment came. Remember, I was talking about moments earlier on. A moment came in which the dictators party, they were cracks, they began to fight amongst themselves, and we saw an opportunity to lobby for the removal of Robert Mugabe and for the ruling party, or the party that was ruling Zimbabwe, to help restart Zimbabwe for a new start. And it seems to us that this was a great opportunity to kind of rally people around, and it worked. Robert Mugabe's deputy president and him were having a big fight. Their fallout eventually led to him being removed from power. We were part of mobilizing people to get on the street and march for him to leave and to leave office, and it worked. Unfortunately, the vice president who got into power was worse, and almost kind of immediately just continued what Robert Mugabe was doing, and of course made it even worse. So the human rights situation is dire at the moment. The economy is in shambles once again in Zimbabwe, but so also the heartbeat of the resistance movement is still there. And I'm thankful that we were able to start it. We were able to move it to a place where another group of people could pick it up and take it to the next level. And I've always said to people that the success of our movements and the success of our work may not always result in perfect change on the things we want, but it results in the creation of new ideas and the creation of vehicles that we didn't have before. And that's where the win is. The win is you did something that is now a part of history and that other people can see, and other people can either copy, or they can build on top of that, or they can get inspiration from it.
All right. So, what advice would you give young Zimbabweans who want to make a difference but maybe feel powerless and they don't know what to do?
I've always said that your cause is what makes way for your courage, or should I say, the clarity of your cause begets the intensity of your courage. And so there is a need to discover what your cause is. There's a famous saying in Africa that which is quite popularized, and it says that every generation must figure out what their purpose is, what their call is, and then they must also figure out whether they're going to fulfill it or whether they're going to betray it. It's a bit of a heavy word, but
Yeah.
that's just the truth. So my advice continues to be, even now with the groups that I meet, is what's your personal cause? What is your reason for wanting to see a better Zimbabwe, a changed Zimbabwe? Because it is on the back of your personal reason, it's on the back of your own personal story that you'll be able to build something that you can invite people to participate in. The actions that you will take, the ideas that you have for change, they are based on what your personal story is. And then around that, invite others to be a part of it, and then begin to grow something that's bigger than yourself.
All right, talk to me about you and your future. Well, right now, what's going on? Are you still involved in the movement? Are you looking to bring that movement elsewhere? Talk to me about what you're up to.
So part of what I've done with that work is, like I said earlier on, is that the movement now exists in different forms. It's decentralized. It's people that are leading different aspects of what the original movement was. I'm not at the center of it. They lead it themselves, and I'm just somebody who advises. But bigger than that, what I spend a lot of my time doing now is helping people around the world, in different parts of the world, who are trying to bring change, who are trying to grow movements, to help them with the tools of how to build a movement, to help them with lessons from my own story, from my own journey, that they can apply to their story and their journey currently right now. So I speak a lot with movement leaders. I speak a lot with even sometimes, businesses and organizations that are trying to move masses in a particular direction, especially for change. And I recently wrote my book, which tells the story of what we did in Zimbabwe. It's a book, it's entitled Crazy Epic Courage: How a Nobody Challenged Brutal Dictators and Moved a Nation. And it's the full story. I literally just sat down and I just wrote exactly what we did, what I experienced, and what we were trying to do, and I just put my heart into that book, and that's become a big part of what I'm doing at the moment.
All right, well, you just stole my thunder with that whole with the book and the description. Going from you're not a nobody, but it's a nice. It sounds fun and all that. All right, last question. Tell us how you escaped from prison.
Oh, Greg, this was an incredible moment, because that escape was aided by some of most unlikeliest helpers that I could have found.
Contributors.
Yes, contributors. I was held in this prison for 2 days on my first arrest after that boycott happened. And on the day that we were going to court to begin my treason trial, the police officer who was taking me there came to my cell and said to me, we're going to delay because there's about 200 people that are gathered at the courts. They are shouting and singing and praying and demanding your release. But it's only 250. We're going to send the riot police. They'll get beaten up and they'll leave. But then he came back an hour later and said, hey, that number is about 500 now. And then he went back again and he came back and he said, hey, man, that number is about 1,000 now. And this kept happening until about 7 to 8 hours later. We hadn't left for the courts yet. And now there was 10,000 people gathered at the courts, and it's nighttime, and they have flags, they have candles. And I mean, this thing has just taken a life of its own, and it's spontaneous. It was amazing to see this happen. And for me, by the way, side note, it helped me overcome the pain of the last 2 nights where I was tortured in prison, because, Greg, I saw people do the thing that we had been teaching them to do over the previous 3 months, just to find their voice, to find their courage. And they put it into action, and they did it themselves without me calling them. It was amazing to see. But that night in court, this group was growing, and the government feared that there was going to be a revolution. So what they did is they let me go. They said, "Hey, let's let him go, and we'll rearrest him early in the morning. After this crowd has gone home, we'll rearrest him in the morning." So after they release me, I'm about to go out into this crowd, and these prison officers who were leading me, I had to go back downstairs into the dungeons below to collect my stuff and sign out. And they said to me, "Yeah, we have to go back down to the dungeons, and then you leave out through the back." And so once we're going and we're about to leave, and I write about it all in the book. I had so much fun writing that section in the book, Crazy Epic Courage. But once we get down there, these prison officers, these two young prison officers, they whisper to me, and they say to me, "You're being rearrested today through the back door that you're supposed to leave through. So here's the deal. If you trust us, we're gonna lead you back up to the front door so that you go right into the 10,000 people crowd that's waiting, and you don't get arrested." I'm freaking out at this point, right, Greg? Because now I don't know whether to trust these guys. I mean, these are prison officers. Like, are you kidding me? If anything sounds like an abduction plan, it's what you guys are telling me, right? If you lead me through some other tunnel somewhere, and then I disappear, no one knows what happens to me. But these two guys are faithful to their word. They lead me back upstairs and straight into the crowd, and it was amazing. But that's not the escape part. Once I get home, I get a call from somebody who is the chaplain in the police force. And he's the one who says, "Listen, I'm not going to tell you my name, but I'm one of the chaplains, and I'm in support of what you're doing. What I know for sure is you're getting picked up early in the morning. So do what you will with that information." My wife immediately packs my backpack, gives me a few clothes, hands me my passport, and she says, "Get out. You need to go. You need to go." And I'm like, "Well, babe, what about you? What about the kids?" And she's like, "Don't worry about us. We will figure out a way, but you need to leave." And so that night, I'm driven 6 hours to a small border in the middle of the night, and I'm waiting in the forest for the border to open so that I can cross, because I needed to get the passport stamp, so that if I needed to come back, I wouldn't be arrested for leaving the country illegally, because that's the thing in Zimbabwe. If you leave the country without your passport being stamped, you get arrested on your way back. So I'm waiting all night. I sit in this forest. I can hear the hyenas. I mean, it was just, it was really, really, really scary. And eventually I get into this small border post in the middle of nowhere. It has no electricity, and I'm trying to get my passport stamped. And the guy who's stamping my passport looks at my passport, and he says to me, and at this time I've taken my glasses off, I've shaved off my beard, and I'm putting on this hat and I'm trying to cover my face. And he says to me, "Look up at me." He says, "Your name looks familiar. Are you related to that guy that's causing trouble up in the capital city? He was arrested last night and people gathered, whatnot." And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, it's over. It's over. He knows who I am, and I'm getting arrested. And so I don't say anything. I just laughed.
Yeah.
I kind of just went, mm, and just didn't say anything. And so he pages through my passport, and then he leaves for a couple of seconds. He says, "I'm coming back in a few seconds." He goes to another room, comes back with my passport, and I'm thinking that's it. He's coming back with police, and we're done. He opens it, he stamps it, he gives it back to me. And then as I'm leaving the small building, it's in the middle of nowhere. Just as I'm about to get out the door, that's when he yells, "Hey, Pastor, you travel safely, okay?" And at that point, I realized this person knew who I was, and essentially he let me go. Essentially, he let me go because I'm quite sure that they had put out a stop notice for me already at that point. But he let me go, and I was able to cross the border into Botswana. One of the human rights organizations in Zimbabwe had organized for someone to pick me up on the other side, and eventually I was able to go scot free. And my family came as well, and met me, and we made our way to the U.S. But I have to tell you, the twist in that is that even after we get to the U.S., and I write about it in the book, the twist is that 6 months after being in exile in the U.S., I sense the job was not done. So I left my family here in the US and I went back to Zimbabwe. And I was arrested immediately on arrival at the airport, and went straight back to the maximum security prison again. And then the journey carried on, as I explained later, with the protests and with the removal of the dictator much later.
All right. And I just wanted to point this out to the audience. Like Martin Luther King and Gandhi, your resistance was nonviolent and
Hmm.
successful at the level that you described earlier. It's an amazing story. I think for those out there that, want to get up the courage to resist, I would say the first thing to do would be to buy Crazy Epic Courage and read
Hmm.
it. And you
Hmm.
can see and feel what Pastor Evan has gone through and how he survived. And one of the things that I like about doing a YouTube podcast is that people can see my guests and they can see you look good. You don't look like, you've been tortured, you've gone through the ropes or whatever. But look how the guy's smiling. He's learned about forgiveness. I know I wanted to get into that, but I try to keep my shows a certain level of time and
Right.
all that. Um, but let's end it on that. Talk to me about how you, although Mugabe and his henchmen tortured you, you are. And we talked about emotions and fear and all that. So let's talk about forgiveness and justice and your take on that, and that'll be a wrap on today's show.
I think it's important for people to understand that forgiveness is different from the demand for justice, right? Justice must always be served. The righting of wrongs is a pursuit that should never be given up. And sometimes people struggle, with that concept because they feel like, well, if you forgave somebody, then you don't pursue the righting of wrongs. But that's what justice is bringing back things to where they were before the crime was perpetrated, or a sense of kind of righting the wrongs. Forgiveness is such an important aspect of doing this work, and it's something that you have to grow in understanding, because what it does is that, first of all, it keeps you with a pure heart. It keeps the issue, and you're able to separate the issue from the person who's doing these things. Here's why I say it. It's easy to cross over into wanting the person who perpetrated things against you to hurt them or to harm them, or to kill them, or to start being violent generally. And it's a hard thing. I get it. Even as I say it, I can sense how hard that is. But forgiving what a person did to you allows you to not be like that person yourself, allows you to not be like that system yourself. It allows you to hold the power to change it without becoming it. I don't know if that makes any sense. But
Yep.
for me, this is how I have continued my work with a clean heart, with a pure heart, to still demand justice, but not to be violent, but not to seek the death or to seek harm to those that harmed me, to those that harmed us, because we cannot achieve justice by doing to those who hurt us the same thing that they did to us. I know people feel like that's what justice and that's what forgiveness is. The problem with it is that it just creates a cycle of more hate and a cycle of more harm. What you want to do is to replace this harm and this evil with something better, which is, we don't tolerate evil, but we're not going to become evil ourselves.
All right. I think we're going to end on that note. Pastor Evan, you're an amazing man. I want you to keep up all the good work. I want people to understand he was named by the Foreign Policy magazine one of the top 100 global thinkers in 2016. Daily Maverick, newspaper of South Africa, named him 2016 African Person of the Year, and he's a Stanford University Fellow of the Center for Democracy, Development, and Rule of Law, book author, amazing person. Evan, thank you for coming on and sharing your message. People out there, if you want to resist, I don't care if it's the little school project or a little league baseball governor that's running everybody into the ground, you can do it. Listen to this episode, read Evan's book. Pastor Evan, thank you for coming on and sharing your story today. And it was great meeting you.
A big honor, Greg. Thank you so much.
That's all for this episode of Cut to the Chase. But before you go, will you open up your podcast app and give us a 5-star review? You can also leave a comment about what you liked most or other topics you'd like us to cover. And please be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any upcoming shows. Thanks, everybody. Be safe out there.